There is a line, almost 3,000 years old, that has survived nearly everything that has tried to erase it. The face that launched 1,000 ships. It refers to Helen of Troy, the woman whose beauty, according to legend, was so extraordinary that two civilizations went to war over the right to possess her. For 10 years, armies bled beneath the walls of Troy. Kings died, cities burned, heroes were buried, and the entire catastrophe was set in motion, the story tells us, by a single face. It is one of the oldest ideas in Western culture, and it contains a claim we have never quite known what to do with, that beauty is not a decoration, that beauty is a force, that a face, under the right circumstances, can move the world. We are taught almost from the beginning to dismiss this idea as shallow. Beauty is only skin deep, we say. It is what is inside that counts. Do not judge a book by its cover. These are the lessons we repeat to children and to ourselves, and there is wisdom in them. But there is also something dishonest, because everything in the way human beings actually behave suggests we do not believe them. We judge the cover constantly. We judge it instantly, unconsciously, and with remarkable consequences. The story of Helen endures not because it is a fantasy, but because it names a truth we prefer to keep quiet. Beauty has always been a kind of power, and that power has shaped lives, fortunes, and history far more than we like to admit. This is what we might call the Helen Effect. It is the strange, measurable, and often uncomfortable way that physical beauty translates into influence, opportunity, and authority. It operates in courtrooms and boardrooms, in palaces and on screens. In the split second, a stranger decides whether to trust you. It has lifted some women to extraordinary heights and trapped others in gilded cages. It is real, it is ancient, and it is one of the least honestly discussed forces in human affairs. It is worth being honest about why this subject makes us uncomfortable. To admit that beauty is power feels like a betrayal of fairness, an insult to everyone who has built a life on effort, character, and intelligence rather than the luck of a face. We want to believe the world rewards what we earn, not what we were born looking like, and so we wave the truth away, insisting beauty does not really matter, even as we watch it open doors all around us. But pretending a power does not exist does not protect anyone from it. It only leaves us unable to understand how it works, who it lifts, who it traps, and what it quietly costs. The honest path is not to deny the Helen Effect, but to look directly at it. And yet beauty is also one of the most treacherous forms of power a person can possess. Because of all the kinds of power, it may be the one we least control. We do not choose the face we are born with. We cannot stop it from changing, and the power it grants is not really held by the beautiful person at all. It is granted by everyone who looks at her, which means it can be taken back. To understand the Helen Effect is to understand a paradox at the center of beauty itself. It can launch 1,000 ships, but it cannot tell them where to sail. To see how this works, we have to begin with Helen herself, and with a question the legend almost never asks. If beauty is power, then Helen of Troy should have been one of the most powerful people in the ancient world. So why, when you look closely at her story, does she seem to have had almost no power at all? The two faces of beauty. Read the legend of Helen carefully, and something unsettling emerges. For a woman whose beauty supposedly commanded the fate of nations, she commands almost nothing in her own story. She is desired, fought over, abducted, blamed, and reclaimed, but she rarely decides. She is the prize, never the player. Men cross seas for her, but they do not consult her. Her face moves 1,000 ships, and she is not standing at the helm of even one. The most beautiful woman in the world, in the oldest story we tell about beauty, is essentially a possession with a famous face. This is the first thing to understand about the Helen Effect. Beauty is power, but it is a peculiar kind of power because it can coexist with total powerlessness. The same face that gives a woman enormous significance can strip her of agency, turning her into an object so valuable that everyone wants to own her and no one thinks to ask what she wants. Beauty makes you matter intensely to other people. It does not by itself give you any say in how you matter. And so beauty has always worn two faces. With one, it opens doors that are closed to almost everyone else. It draws attention, affection, opportunity, and forgiveness. It makes people want to be near you, to help you, to believe the best about you. With the other face, it closes a different set of doors. It invites envy, suspicion, and dismissal. It encourages the world to see the surface and stop there, to assume that a beautiful woman must be empty, that her successes were unearned, that she is decoration rather than substance. The Helen Effect gives with one hand and takes with the other, and the taking is often invisible until it is too late. There is a reason so many fairy tales hand their heroines beauty and then immediately put them to sleep. The beautiful princess is adored, pursued, and rescued, but she is rarely awake for her own story. She is admired in her stillness, valued precisely for being a lovely object to be won. The fantasy reveals something the culture believed without quite saying it, that a woman's beauty was most perfect when it asked for nothing and decided nothing, when it simply waited to be claimed. The Helen Effect, at its most seductive, is also at its most disarming, offering a woman the world's complete attention in exchange for her complete passivity. Consider how differently the two faces fall on the same life. A beautiful woman walks into a room and is instantly granted warmth she did not ask for and trust she has not earned. That is the gift. But the same woman, when she speaks with intelligence or ambition, is met with surprise as though a painting had started giving instructions. Her seriousness is a novelty. Her competence is a plot twist. The beauty that won her the room now works quietly against her being taken seriously inside it. She is believed beautiful and therefore assumed to be nothing more. This is why beauty is so often described across cultures and centuries as both a blessing and a curse. The language is not poetic exaggeration. It is an accurate description of a power that is genuinely double-edged. To possess great beauty is to hold something that can elevate you beyond your circumstances and imprison you within other people's imaginations at the very same time. Helen is remembered as the most beautiful woman who ever lived. She is also remembered as the cause of a war she did not start, the face blamed for the deaths of thousands. Both of these are the Helen Effect. They were never separable. For a long time, the power of beauty could be dismissed as superstition, the stuff of legend and vanity. But over the last century, researchers began to study it directly, and what they found confirmed, in the cold language of data, what the ancients had expressed in myth. Beauty is not only powerful in stories, it is powerful in measurable, repeatable, almost mechanical ways, and the mechanism has a name. Psychologists call it the halo effect. The halo effect describes a simple but consequential glitch in human judgment. When we perceive one positive quality in a person, we unconsciously assume the presence of others. And physical attractiveness turns out to be one of the most powerful triggers of this effect. In study after study, people judge attractive individuals to be more intelligent, more trustworthy, more competent, more kind, and more honest, despite having no evidence of any of these things. The beautiful face does not merely please the eye, it quietly rewrites our assessment of the entire person behind it. We see a pleasing surface and infer a pleasing soul. One of the foundational studies in this field gave the phenomenon its enduring name. Researchers asked ordinary people to evaluate strangers based only on photographs, and the results were striking in their consistency. Attractive faces were assumed to belong to people who were happier, more successful, more socially skilled, more likely to hold prestigious jobs and good marriages. The participants were inventing entire imagined lives, rich with virtue and accomplishment, from nothing but the arrangement of a face. The researchers summarized the finding in a phrase that has followed beauty ever since. What is beautiful is good. Not what is beautiful is pleasant or attractive, but good, as though the surface were a window onto the moral character beneath. It is a stunning thing to assume about a stranger, and we assume it constantly. The consequences of this are not trivial, and they are not confined to romance. Economists have documented what they bluntly call the beauty premium. Attractive people are more likely to be hired, more likely to be promoted, and more likely to be paid more for the same work. They receive more lenient treatment in courtrooms and lighter sentences for the same crimes. They are rated as better teachers, more persuasive speakers, more capable leaders. The advantage begins early and compounds over a lifetime. It is one of the most consistent and least discussed forms of unearned privilege in human society, and it operates almost entirely beneath conscious awareness. The effect reaches even into the places we imagine to be most rational. In elections, candidates judged more attractive and more competent looking from a glance at their faces win more often, and voters are largely unaware that appearance influenced them at all. In the justice system, where impartiality is the entire promise, attractiveness has been shown to affect verdicts and the severity of sentences. The premium follows beauty into the spaces designed specifically to be immune to it. There is a grim wrinkle here too. When beauty is perceived to have been used as a weapon, a con, a seduction turned to harm, the same attractiveness that once earned leniency can provoke harsher judgment. The power of beauty, even in the data, is never simply a gift. It is a force that can rebound. What makes this so difficult to dismiss as mere cultural prejudice is how early and how universally it appears. Infants, far too young to have absorbed any beauty standard from magazines or media, will gaze longer at faces that adults independently rate as attractive. Across wildly different cultures separated by geography and history, certain features are found beautiful with surprising agreement, symmetry, clear skin, proportions that signal youth and health. This suggests that the human response to beauty is not purely taught. It is, at least in part, wired into us a deep and ancient instinct that long predates any of the stories we tell about it. And here the legend and the laboratory meet. The brain, faced with overwhelming complexity and forced to make rapid judgments about strangers, reaches for shortcuts. Beauty is one of the most powerful shortcuts it has. A quick proxy the mind uses to estimate a person's worth before any real information arrives. This is why beauty feels like power to those who possess it and those who encounter it alike. It bypasses argument. It works before thought. The beautiful person is granted instantly and for free the benefit of the doubt that everyone else must labor to earn. Helen's face did not need to make a case. That was precisely its power. It made the case simply by being seen. Once you understand beauty as a genuine instrument of influence, the history of power begins to read differently. For most of human history, women were locked out of the formal channels of authority. They could not hold most offices, command most armies, or inherit most thrones. The doors to power were bolted shut. But beauty was a key that occasionally fit a lock no other key could reach. And the women who understood this used it to enter rooms that were otherwise sealed against them. Long before Cleopatra, the ancient world preserved the names of women whose beauty became inseparable from their authority. Nefertiti, Queen of Egypt, whose very name means a beautiful woman, has come, ruled beside a pharaoh in an age of religious revolution, and her sculpted likeness has survived 3,000 years as one of the most famous faces in human history, a face that still draws crowds across the world. In Athens, Aspasia, companion of the great statesman Pericles, was renowned for both beauty and brilliance, said to have influenced the most powerful man in the city, and to have moved among its philosophers as an equal. At a time when respectable women were confined to the household, these were women who converted the attention beauty commanded into a foothold in worlds that would otherwise have been sealed. The most famous example is also the most misunderstood. Cleopatra is remembered as a woman of legendary beauty who seduced two of the most powerful men in Rome. But the historical Cleopatra was, by many accounts, not a great beauty at all in the conventional sense. Her true weapons were intelligence, education, wit, and an extraordinary presence, the ability to charm, to converse in many languages, to make a powerful man feel he was the only person in the world. What the legend did was collapse all of that formidable capability into the single word beauty, because beauty was the only kind of female power the storytellers had a category for. The myth flattered her looks in order to avoid crediting her mind. Even in being remembered as powerful, she was being diminished. But where beauty was real, it could be wielded with deliberate skill. Across the courts of history, a particular figure recurs, the royal mistress or favorite who, possessing no official authority whatsoever, accumulated enormous real influence through proximity to a king. In 18th century France, Madame de Pompadour rose through beauty and charm to become the official mistress of the king. And from that position, she shaped policy, directed patronage, influenced appointments, and effectively functioned as one of the most powerful figures in the kingdom, all without a single official title. The beauty opened the door. What she did once inside was statecraft. And the leverage was not only romantic. In 16th century France, Diane de Poitiers held the devotion of a king well into an age when the court expected her influence to fade, and she used it to shape patronage and policy for decades. Anne Boleyn reshaped the religious history of an entire nation, not through conventional beauty alone, but through a magnetism and intelligence that held a king long enough to break England from the Church of Rome. In each case, the world preferred to tell the story as a tale of seduction, because seduction was a power it could comprehend in a woman. But behind the seductress, the storytellers imagined, stood something else, a strategist who understood exactly what her presence did to the people around her and how to direct it. The pattern repeats across centuries and continents. The courtesans of Renaissance Venice, some of the most educated women of their age, used beauty to gain access to circles of power and learning close to respectable wives. Royal favorites steered empires from bedchambers. And in the 20th century, a king of England gave up his throne, the most powerful position in his world, rather than give up the woman he loved, a moment that stands as a kind of modern Trojan War, an entire monarchy shaken by the pull of a single attachment. Beauty and the desire it provokes has repeatedly proven strong enough to bend institutions that nothing else could move. What unites all of these women is that they extracted real power from a society that offered them no legitimate path to it. They turned the one form of leverage the world allowed them into access, and access into influence. It is easy, looking back, to be dismissive, to say they merely traded on their looks, but that judgment misses the deeper point. In a world that barred women from nearly every avenue of power, the women who mastered the Helen Effect were not being shallow. They were being strategic. They were using the only tool that had been left within their reach, and some of them used it to move nations. And yet, for all the doors it opens, beauty has always been a power that exacts a heavy and particular price, and that price is the second face of the Helen Effect, the one we are far more reluctant to look at. Because the same force that elevates a woman can also become the bars of a very comfortable cage. The first cost is the cost of not being taken seriously. The beautiful woman is granted attention, but denied depth. Her thoughts are interrupted by compliments. Her work is attributed to her appearance, as though success and beauty could not honestly coexist, as though one must explain away the other. She learns that the room will look at her before it listens to her, and that getting it to listen requires overcoming the very thing that made it look. Many women have spoken of the strange loneliness of being seen constantly and known almost not at all, of being the most visible person in the room and the least understood. Beauty makes you a surface, and people are content to stop at surfaces. The second cost is impermanence, and it is the cruelest because beauty is a form of power with an expiration date built into it. The throne of competence can be held for a lifetime. The throne of beauty cannot. It is tied to youth, and youth is the one possession that no strategy, no wealth, and no will can preserve. A woman who builds her power on her beauty alone is building on ground that is guaranteed to give way, and the world that adored her at 25 will grow strangely indifferent at 50. Not because she has changed in any meaningful way, but because the asset has depreciated. There is a particular tragedy reserved for those who were taught that their face was their fortune and then watched the markets close. The modern world has not escaped this cage, it has industrialized it. Where once beauty was a fortune of birth, it is now also a vast economy, a global marketplace of cosmetics, procedures, filters, and feeds, all promising to manufacture the very thing the Helen Effect rewards. Young women grow up inside a machine that tells them in 10,000 small ways each day that their face is their most valuable asset and that it is never quite enough. The gaze that once fell on a woman in a single room now follows her everywhere, measured in likes and views, and the silent comparison of her real face to a perfected one. The power of beauty has never been more visible, more pursued, or more anxiously held. And the cage has never had so many mirrors. The third cost is suspicion, the way beauty makes a woman dangerous in the eyes of the world, and therefore a target for blame. The beautiful woman is the seductress, the temptation, the one who makes men lose their reason. And so she is held responsible for the reactions she provokes. Helen is the perfect example. She did not start the Trojan War. She was, in most versions of the story, taken, traded, a pawn in the ambitions of men. And yet, for 3,000 years, her name has been a byword for the woman whose beauty caused a catastrophe. The face was blamed for the war that was fought to possess it. This is the oldest trick of the Helen Effect, to grant a woman the power of being desired, and then to punish her for the desire she did not ask to create. And beneath all of these costs lies the deepest one of all. The power of beauty is not really yours. It lives in the eye of the person looking at you. It is conferred by their desire, their approval, their gaze, which means it can be withdrawn the instant their attention moves on. To depend on beauty is to depend on being wanted by others, and there is no more precarious foundation for a life than that. The woman whose power comes entirely from how she is seen has handed the keys to her own significance to every stranger who looks at her. She reigns only as long as she is watched, and she does not control the watching. Why should any of this be true? Why should an arrangement of features have the power to alter judgment, open doors, and bend the course of lives? The answer reaches back far beyond civilization, into the deep machinery of how human beings read one another, and understanding it strips beauty of some of its mystery without diminishing any of its force. For most of human existence, our ancestors had to make rapid, high-stakes judgments about other people with almost no information. Who is healthy? Who is strong? Who would make a viable partner, a useful ally, a survivable mate? In the absence of medical records or biographies, the body itself became the document, and beauty became a kind of shorthand. Many of the traits we find beautiful are, at root, signals of health, youth, and vitality, the very things that mattered most when survival was uncertain. The instinct to be drawn toward beauty was, in this sense, an instinct toward life. We did not invent the response to beauty. We inherited it from ancestors for whom reading a face quickly could mean the difference between thriving and not. But human beings did something with this instinct that no other creature does. We moralized it. We did not merely find beauty pleasing. We decided it meant something about character. Across mythology, religion, and art, The beautiful was equated with the good and the ugly with the wicked. Heroes were handsome, villains were deformed, angels were radiant, and evil was rendered grotesque. This is the halo effect written into culture itself, the ancient and persistent assumption that the surface reveals the soul. It is, of course, false. Beauty has no correlation with virtue, but the assumption is so old and so deep that we apply it constantly, granting the beautiful a presumption of goodness they have done nothing to earn. This also explains why beauty provokes not only admiration but envy, and why the envy so often curdles into cruelty. If beauty is read as a sign of worth, then the beautiful person seems to have been handed worth without having earned it, and that perceived unfairness breeds resentment. The same instinct that makes us adore the beautiful makes us want at times to see them humbled, to discover that the lovely surface conceals emptiness or ruin. The beautiful woman is watched for her fall as eagerly as she was watched for her face. This is one more way the power of beauty is unlike the power of skill. Few people resent a surgeon for being good at surgery. A great many resent a woman for being lovely, because beauty feels like a status granted by fate rather than won by effort, and fate is the hardest unfairness to forgive. And this reveals the truth at the center of the entire phenomenon. Beauty is power, genuine power, but it is a borrowed power conferred rather than possessed. It exists only in relationship, only in the gap between the one who is seen and the ones who see. The competent person carries their power within them in skills that remain when the room empties. The beautiful person carries something more fragile, a power that lights up only when others are looking and goes dark when they look away. This is the crucial distinction the Helen Effect teaches. There is power that radiates outward from who you are, and there is power that is reflected back to you from how you are seen. They are not the same, and the second can never be fully trusted because it was never fully yours. This is why the wisest traditions have always regarded beauty with a kind of caution, not contempt, but caution, the way one regards any powerful thing that is not entirely under one's control. Beauty is a gift that arrives unearned and departs uninvited. To despise it is foolish, for it is real leverage in a world that responds to it. But to build a life on it alone is more foolish still, for it is leverage that rests in other people's hands. The question the Helen Effect quietly poses to anyone who possesses beauty is this: what will you do with a power that everyone can see, that opens every door, and that you do not actually own? The answer for the women who navigated this paradox most successfully was always the same. They understood that beauty was a beginning, not a destination. They treated it as a door, not a room. They used the attention it bought to gain access, and then they built something inside that access that the fading of beauty could never take away. They turned the borrowed power of being seen into the lasting power of being capable, and in doing so, they freed themselves from the trap that beauty sets for those who mistake it for the whole of their worth. This is the real lesson hidden inside the legend, and it is almost the opposite of the lesson we usually take from it. Helen's tragedy was not that she was beautiful. It was that she was only ever allowed to be beautiful, reduced to a face, denied any other form of power, blamed for the desires she provoked, and granted no agency over the events her existence set in motion. She was the Helen Effect in its purest and most powerless form, all surface and no say. The women who escaped that fate were the ones who refused to let their beauty be the entire story, who understood that the face might open the door, but that what mattered was who walked through it. There is a freedom in seeing beauty clearly, in neither worshiping it nor pretending it does not matter. To deny that beauty is power is to be naive about the world. To believe that beauty is the only power a woman has is to be imprisoned by it. The clear-eyed view sits between these, recognizing beauty as one instrument among many, real but limited, useful but temporary, a key that opens certain doors but cannot tell you what to do once you are through them. Beauty can buy you time and access and attention. What you purchase with that currency is up to you. None of this is an argument against beauty any more than understanding wealth is an argument against money. It is an argument for clarity. A woman who knows that her beauty grants her an audience can choose what to say once she has it. A woman who knows that the power is borrowed can decide not to stake her whole self on a loan that will one day be called in. The danger was never beauty itself. The danger was always the quiet bargain the world offered alongside it. The suggestion that a beautiful woman need be nothing more, that the face was enough, that she could safely fall asleep inside her own life. To refuse that bargain is the beginning of a power that no gaze confers and no mirror can take away. And there is something quietly liberating in remembering that beauty was never the most enduring kind of power to begin with. The face fades, but the mind sharpens. Desire cools, but competence compounds. The woman who is merely looked at is forgotten the moment a younger face appears. But the woman who used the looking to become something, to learn, to build, to lead, to create, remains long after the gaze has moved on. The most powerful thing beauty can do, in the end, is buy a woman enough time and enough room to become someone the fading cannot diminish. So the face launched 1,000 ships, and that is true, and it has always been true, and it will go on being true as long as human beings are moved by what they see. But the ships were never really Helen's to command, because her power was given to her by the eyes of others and could be taken back by them just as easily. The women who turned beauty into something lasting understood this in their bones. They knew that to be beautiful is to be handed a remarkable and temporary gift, a flare of borrowed light. And they knew that the only real question was what you chose to illuminate with it before it didn't. Beauty is power, but it is the beginning of power, never the end. And the women who understood the difference were the ones who were never truly at its mercy.